Hi kids, Mr. Bickford. Today's lesson is Chapter 1, Lesson 7. It is called Ratio and Rate Problems. A reminder, whenever you see the Cornell note format on the wall, that you are going to need a Cornell note page, if that's how you're taking notes, or your composition book. Today's lesson, there's really nothing new in today's lesson. We are solving ratio and rate problems, and we are using equivalent ratios and unit rates, a combination of those strategies to solve problems. Let's get going. The first problem that we are going to solve is this. Out of 30 kids, 13 have a cat. So imagine we're surveying a class of 30 students and we take a poll. How many kids have a cat? 13 kids raise their hand. From that, we could predict how many if there's 300 kids. So this might be a classroom and 13 kids have a cat. And then we could ask, well, how many, if there's 300 sixth graders altogether, how many would we predict would have a cat? So the first ratio that I see is this. 30 kids and 13 have a cat. So that's going to be my starting ratio. And I'm going to label it like this. 13 students have a cat out of 30 students total, or 30 kids. And I'm going to solve this problem by setting up another ratio, except this time, now we've got 300 kids, and we're trying to figure out this number. How many would have a cat if we have 300 kids? Again, my starting ratio, here it is, written as a fraction. So we're going to solve this problem using equivalent ratios. And this should look very familiar. How would we go from 30 to get to 300? Now, a lot of you can probably do that mental math, but if you're not sure what you need to do on your calculator, if you're multiplying in this direction you would be dividing. Dividing and multiplying undo each other. If you're not sure what this number is, the way you get that number is you would type in 300 divided by 30. So everybody do that on your calculator. If you do 300 divided by 30, you are going to get 10. That tells you what this number is right there. And you can test it. Type in 30 times 10, you're going to get 300. The big idea for this unit, and this should look familiar, is if you're multiplying 10 right here, you've got to multiply 10 right here as well. So now we can use our calculator or mental math. 13 times 10 is 130. So our answer would be, if there are 300 kids in the 6th grade, we would predict 130 would have cats. So I'm going to highlight my arrows that are the same, times 10 times 10. And how I got that was this. I'm going to be dividing in this direction. If you don't know that that's a 10, you would divide this number divided by this number. I'm going to highlight that in green. Okay, so now you've got the strategy. If you don't know what that number is, you're going to divide in this direction, and that will give you that number. Again, this strategy is called uh-oh. Well, you know who that is. Hey, Bob, what's happening? Yeah? You got another hidden treasure idea? Okay. Uh, yep. I've talked to the kids about that before. Yeah, and I've talked to the kids about that before. Okay. I like it. I like it. Okay. Thanks a lot, SpongeBob. I'll talk to you later. All right. You know who called with another idea for today's hidden treasure. Today's hidden treasure is you've got to have chapter 1, lesson 7 notes, and you must have a favorite independent reading book with you. So if you have the notes behind me, if you complete the notes for lesson 7, and you've got an independent reading book, which we've talked about, you should be bringing that to class every period, every day, you will win the hidden treasure. Okay, let's move on. The next example that I want to go over with you is this, and this is it's a true fun fact. An elephant drinks 200 gallons every 4 days. How much does an elephant drink in 28 days? So I'm going to actually solve this one using both strategies, an equivalent ratio strategy and a unit rate strategy. So a lot of the problems that you're going to run into, you could solve in multiple ways. I'm actually going to solve this one using both, showing an example of each one. So I go back to my text. I see that my starting ratio is that an elephant drinks 200 gallons every 4 days. So I'm going to write that down. 200 gallons every 4 days. I'll abbreviate D for days. I could change this into a unit rate. Remember that a unit rate, this is not a unit rate because it's something to 4. A unit rate is something to 1. Whatever my denominator is, I divide it by that number to change a rate into a unit rate. So 4 divided by 4, that's going to give me 1 day. And whatever I'm dividing by or multiplying by here, I must do the same thing in order to keep the ratio equal. Go back and just highlight my text, 200 gallons every 4 days. That is my starting ratio or rate. I'm dividing by 4 to make it into a unit rate. So now I know after I've changed it into a unit rate that the good old elephant drinks 50 gallons in 1 day. So this is now a unit rate because it is something to 1. Okay, so I'm going to circle that unit rate strategy. And the last thing I have to do is, my question says, how much does the elephant drink in 28 days? So now all I have to do is take, how much does that elephant drink in 1 day, which is 50 gallons, times 28 days. That's going to give me my answer. Well, that number, after you calculate that, is 1,400 gallons. That was the unit rate strategy. Here's the rate, 200 gallons every 4 days, divide by 4, becomes a unit rate. Remember, main theme for this chapter, you have to divide by the same number or multiply by the same number to keep ratios equivalent. So this was the unit rate strategy. We could have also used an equivalent ratio strategy. That would look like this. Either one of these methods would work. 200 gallons every 4 days. And I could set up another ratio over here. How much water does the elephant drink in 28 days? I am trying to find this number right here. I could use my calculator to find what this number is. Many of you might see it. 4 times what gets you to 28? If you know that number, you've got it. If you don't, remember the strategy I taught you right here is this number divided by this number. If you do 28 divided by 4, you get 7. So now I know that that number is 7, which means I have to multiply this number times 7. Let's go ahead and write that down just in case you forgot. 28 divided by 4 would give you that number, 7. Okay, and again, let's just show our highlighting. Our starting ratio is that. And if we're not sure what this number is, you would divide in this direction. That's what this is. That gave us the 7 times 7 times 7. Well, now I do 200 times 7 and I get the same number. I get 1,400 gallons. Got the same thing in 2 different methods. Unit rate method, that's this part. This is equivalent ratios, same thing that we did up here. So now you've got 2 different strategies to solve ratio and rate problems. That's it for lesson 7. Please have your notes ready. SpongeBob gave you the hidden treasure for this one, and in class, you'll find out your assignment. Until next time.